I've always said that South Carolina never got its just due when all of this. People focus a lot on what happened in Mississippi, what happened in Alabama, even in some instances in Georgia. I came of age during a very critical time in the history of our country. I was living in the little town of Sumter, South Carolina, which is just about 20 miles from Summerton. And Summerton is where all of the activities started. The NAACP was very active in my hometown. My mother was very active with the NAACP. And we decided, for whatever reason, that we were going to have a youth council. This was like April or May of 1953. I turned 13 that following July. So I was still 12 years old when I was elected president of that chapter. That was all because my family was very active in the NAACP, very active in issues surrounding the challenges that had begun to take place. I graduated college December of '61, started teaching in January of '62. So the March on Washington occurred during my second year as a public school teacher down in Charleston. My role in the march was simply to help organize. There were quite a few people from Charleston. I was living in Charleston at the time. I stayed in Charleston and was very active. The records will show very few people focused on the fact that some real serious demonstrations took place in Charleston around that march. And I was active in that stuff. Well, all of this built up to the March on Washington, which I think was just a seminal moment in a very, I think, a seminal year. It was Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech. It was an interesting speech for the scholars. They will focus on the speech that King prepared for that day. It's the time when he addressed the issues of gradualism. He talked about the bad check that black folks had been returned because of insufficient funds. He used that analogy to make his point on the fact that he did not believe that the vaults of opportunity that exist in the society were in fact empty, that there's nothing in that vault for everybody. Most people, though, focus on the part of the speech that wasn't even written for that day. I Have a Dream. King had given that speech plenty of times. The first time I remember it being recorded was at Cobo Hall in Detroit, Michigan, when he talked about I Have a Dream. When he finished his prepared speech for that day, it was a speech, but not a sermon. He had educated, but he had not moved the audience. Everybody remembers the March on Washington for I Have a Dream. That was not the speech for that day. So there were two different speeches by King on that day, the one that we can all read about. And it was a great speech. If you read it, it is just absolutely a great speech. And when my grandchildren watched that speech, the full speech, on the day before Barack Obama was inaugurated, we sat down with CNN to watch it all together. And it's kind of interesting. My grandkids, when the reporter asked about whether or not they'd ever seen that speech before, heard it before, none of them focus on I Have a Dream. They all focus on things like the vaults of opportunity, gradualism. And there's a part in there that King talked about not returning hate for hate.